He leaned across the dimly lit bar, eyes glinting with an otherworldly hunger, and whispered, "Kiss me for 10 minutes." Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something in her chest urged her closer. What she did next would leave everyone in the room utterly speechless. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The Raven's hollow smelled of polished oak and old smoke, the kind of aroma that promised secrets but never told them. Isolde Fairborn moved through the narrow corridors between tables with a grace that made her presence almost invisible, yet somehow everyone felt it. In a city of millions, she had become a fixture of the night, yet no one truly knew her. Not the drunken patrons, not the giggling tourists, not even the regulars who whispered about shadows over cocktails. It was past midnight, and the tavern had shifted into its other life. The warm chatter of ordinary Londoners had thinned to a hum, replaced by murmurs and silent gestures. Candlelight flickered over faces pale and impossibly perfect, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of blood. Not a single soul here was truly ordinary. Isolde had sensed him before she saw him. It was a feeling she had learned to trust over years of navigating both human and hidden worlds. The brush of a presence that didn't belong, the subtle distortion of reality around a being older than the city itself. She had been on edge all evening, her fingers brushing the tray like a dancer rehearsing steps she might never take. He appeared at the bar like a shadow that had grown teeth. His suit was impossibly tailored, black with hints of deep crimson in the seams that seemed to drink the dim light. His hair, silver at the temples, caught the glow of a candle, giving him the look of a portrait recently stolen from some forbidden gallery. And his eyes, those startling, sharp eyes, pinned her to the floor as if reading every thought she hadn't yet dared to think aloud. He said softly, almost casually, "Come here." Isolde froze for a heartbeat. He didn't need to speak. His aura alone had the power to bend the air between them. But she walked anyway, tray held steady, heels clicking faintly against the worn floorboards. Patrons murmured, but none dared look directly at him. The tension was thick, almost tangible, and the bartender, a grizzled man named Henry, muttered under his breath, "Bloody hell, he's here." He smiled slightly as she reached him, the kind of smile that promised both danger and revelation. "I need a favor," he said, voice smooth as silk sliding over steel. "Kiss me. 10 minutes. That's all I ask." Her heart beat with the rhythm of a storm, a slow, steady drum that had nothing to do with fear. Most would have laughed nervously or stepped back. Most would have run. Isolde didn't either. Instead, she regarded him with the quiet calm that had earned her the whispers among the tavern's nocturnal crowd. "Why?" she asked, voice low, almost musical, carrying a subtle authority that made him pause. He tilted his head, curiosity sparking in those unnaturally bright eyes. "Because the night demands it, and because," he hesitated, searching, "I think you'll understand." Isolde let a faint smile touch her lips. Understanding. That word was a trap, a promise, a test. In 10 minutes, she could do what many feared attempting. She had been prepared for moments like this her entire life. Growing up in the misted moors of Northumberland, wandering the halls of her father's collection of cursed artifacts, sensing presences others ignored, learning patience, learning the weight of silence. Then 10 minutes, she said simply, and before he could blink, she had moved closer. Time slowed. The usual sounds of the tavern, the clinking of glasses, muted laughter, receded into a hushed echo, as if the room itself held its breath. Patrons turned their heads, curious, but none could fathom the gravity of what was about to unfold. He leaned forward slightly, tension coiling in his every line. The air between them sparked, not with magic as most would think, but with recognition, two forces acknowledging one another in a silent, unspoken challenge. The kiss began subtly, almost like a conversation without words. Isolde's lips met his for the briefest moment, testing, tasting, reading. His surprise was immediate. He had expected shock, fear, hesitation. Not the stillness she offered, the calm certainty. The first minute passed, then two. The tavern seemed to lean closer, every shadow stretching toward them as if hungry to witness the unfolding event. 10 minutes wasn't just a duration, it was a trial. And in that trial, Isolde revealed herself, not with violence or dramatic magic, but with presence. Every heartbeat, every slight shift, every exhale communicated something ancient, something primal. She was not a pawn. She was not prey. By the fifth minute, he faltered. The calm she exuded, less human, more elemental, pulled at him, challenged him. His own power, centuries in the making, was no match for her quiet control. Patrons began to whisper, sensing without understanding. Something extraordinary was happening. A reflection question arises here. If someone asked you to surrender for 10 minutes to a stranger, could you trust your instincts, or would fear always win? The kiss ended without a dramatic flourish. There was no collapse, no blood, no grand explosion of power. Instead, a subtle shift, like a page turning in a book you didn't realize was open. The vampire stepped back, astonished, a rare, unguarded awe in his expression. You are unlike anyone I've ever known, he said, voice low and tinged with wonder. What are you? Isolde brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her smile enigmatic. Someone who knows her place in the world, she said softly, though her eyes told another story, one of depth, of secrets, of power contained and measured. The room, previously suspended in quiet awe, slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed, but the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. Patrons whispered about the pale man and the waitress who had dared, some saying she must be part witch, some claiming a hidden vampire queen walked among them. Henry, leaning against the bar with a knowing look, muttered, "Bloody hell, lass, that was something else." She only nodded, collecting her tray, returning to her rhythm, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But in truth, the balance of power in the hidden world of London had subtly shifted, and rumors would spread that night and for nights to come. Isolde Fairborn, the waitress, was no ordinary mortal. Her father's lessons, the whispers of the moors, the long nights studying the unseen, they had all prepared her for this moment. And in the quiet corners of the city, where vampires and witches mingled and plotted, a single truth resonated. She was a figure to be reckoned with. Even the vampire, centuries old, felt it. This woman was a turning point, a disruption, and perhaps a key. Isolde walked through the tavern, serving drinks, listening to whispers, smiling faintly at the curious glances. The night was far from over, and she had work to do. But for the first time in a long while, she felt entirely herself, completely in control, and entirely free. As she polished the rim of a glass, her mind drifted briefly to the future. The vampire would return. Others would take notice. The delicate balance between human and supernatural life in London was about to be tested. And she, Isolde Fairborn, was ready. The city never truly slept, but the Raven's Hollow had entered a rare silence in the hours after the 10-minute encounter. Patrons who had been human, or something close, had dispersed, leaving only the whispers of the truly nocturnal to linger. Isolde leaned against the bar, staring into the dim reflection in a brass tray. Every instinct in her body buzzed with awareness, as if the kiss had unlocked something inside her. Something that wasn't just strength, it was perception. The vampire had left as quietly as he had arrived, stepping into the London mist that wound between the cobblestones like a living thing. Yet she felt him everywhere, in the stillness, in the faint pull of the air, even in the residual weight of the shadows. She knew he would return, and when he did, he would expect something different. He would expect a challenge. Isolde's mind wandered back to the moors of Northumberland, to her father's musty library with its shelves bending under the weight of cursed relics and ancient tomes. She had grown up surrounded by stories of beings who walked between worlds, who could bend the very fabric of life and death. Her father had always told her, "Power isn't in force alone, child. It's in knowing the shape of the storm before it strikes." Tonight, she had begun to understand exactly what he meant. The door to the tavern creaked open, breaking her reverie. A young witch she knew only as Celia stepped inside, her hooded coat dusted with rain. "Isolde," Celia whispered, eyes darting nervously toward the empty bar. "You've caused a stir. Word spreads faster than wildfire, and not everyone is pleased." "Not everyone needs to be pleased," Isolde said calmly, setting down the tray she had been polishing. "What's the issue?" "The vampire," Celia said, glancing behind her, as if he might appear from the shadows. "He doesn't forget easily, and neither do the others in the network. You've made waves." Isolde's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Waves aren't enough. We need a ripple that reaches the edges. I intend to do more than wave." Celia's eyes widened. "Isolde, do you realize what you've done? That kiss wasn't merely a moment of intimacy. It revealed something in you, something rare. The others are already whispering, 'She's not just mortal.'" "That's exactly what I want," Isolde replied, her voice soft but unwavering. "The world of the hidden has rules, and sometimes someone needs to remind it that the balance can shift." The two women stood in the quiet bar, the weight of the night heavy between them. Celia glanced toward the shadows pooling in the corners. "I don't know if you're ready for what comes next. They'll test you." "I've been ready my entire life," Isolde said. She allowed her gaze to drift toward the door. Somewhere out there, the vampire waited. But unlike before, there was no fear in her heart, just anticipation. It was only minutes later when the sound of leather shoes against wet cobblestones reached the tavern. The door swung open again, and he was there, framed in the mist and rain. His eyes, piercing and calculating, met hers immediately. He looked older somehow, more mortal in his frustration. "You've changed the rules," he said simply, stepping closer. "I did not expect that." "And yet," Isolde replied, her tone even, "you came back. Curiosity will always outweigh caution for some." He studied her, his expression unreadable. "Do you understand what you've done? That kiss, it was more than a display. You tapped into something forbidden, something that even I, after centuries, have rarely encountered." "Understand perfectly," she said. Her eyes glinted with subtle power. "It was meant to remind the world that there are those who walk unseen, but not unheard. You underestimate mortals who have learned to see." A low hum filled the room, not from machinery, not from music, but from the resonance of the moment itself. Patrons from the tavern's hidden corners, vampires, witches, and other creatures, emerged slowly, drawn like moths to the quiet storm. Even the bartender, Henry, who had seen more strange nights than most, leaned forward with cautious awe. "You've made quite the impression." A tall vampire with stark features murmured from the shadows, voice rich with curiosity. "Not just him," he gestured toward the first vampire, "all of us." Isolde nodded politely, keeping her composure. She felt the energy of the room shift, subtle but undeniable. Her presence was no longer something that could be ignored. It demanded recognition. The first vampire stepped forward, placing a hand just short of hers, as if testing the air. 10 minutes. That brief act. It told me more about you than centuries could about anyone else. "And what did it tell you?" she asked, voice steady. "That you are formidable," he admitted, and there was no arrogance in the word. Only truth. That you could command a room without force, influence without words, and shift outcomes with subtle action. Isolde allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Exactly. You see, there's power in restraint. Power in choosing how and when to reveal it. I've learned that from shadows and whispers, from my father's library, and from nights like this." The air thickened with anticipation, the tension so taut it seemed it might snap. Then, from somewhere deep within her, a new understanding emerged, one that bridged mortal and immortal, fear and control, history and modernity. She felt the pulse of the hidden world aligning around her presence. And at that moment, she realized that her life as a mere waitress was over. She had stepped into something larger, something that would demand wisdom, courage, and, if necessary, cunning. The first vampire, sensing her realization, bowed his head slightly. "I underestimated you, not just as a mortal, but as a force. The night owes you respect." Others in the room murmured in agreement. Whispers floated through the air. "She isn't just a waitress. She isn't just human. She's a turning point." Isolde straightened, letting the murmurs wash over her. She felt the gravity of her choices, the subtle thrill of agency in a world often dominated by beings far older and far more powerful. She knew challenges would come, tests, temptations, threats, but for the first time, she understood that she didn't have to react in fear. She could shape the world around her. Turning her gaze to the vampire who had initiated this chain of events, she said softly, "I spared your arrogance for the sake of curiosity. Now, it is time to understand that the balance is no longer yours to dictate alone. The night has other rules now." The vampire's eyes narrowed, but there was respect in his expression. He inclined his head, a gesture of acknowledgement and perhaps a silent truce. For centuries, he had seen mortals fear him. Few had ever stood with quiet command and emerged unscathed. Fewer still had shifted the tide of perception so effortlessly. "Consider this the beginning," Isolde continued, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying through the heavy air like a ripple that cannot be contained. "The night is long, but its course can be altered, and I am its new pulse." The tavern seemed to exhale collectively. Shadows softened, whispers calmed, and the tension gave way to an unspoken acknowledgement. The balance had shifted, and Isolde Fairborn was at the center of it. Even Henry, behind the bar, shook his head in quiet disbelief. "Lass, you just turned the whole bloody city on its head, and no one even spilled a drink." Isolde smiled faintly, brushing past him as she returned to her rhythm. The city outside was wet and cold, lights glinting off slick streets, but she felt warmth within, a fire stoked by understanding, control, and purpose. She was no longer merely a witness to the hidden world. She was an architect of it. As she closed the bar later that night, she looked out over the empty streets. London stretched endlessly, unaware of the quiet revolutions occurring in its shadows. Somewhere out there, her mysterious visitor, this vampire, would return. And when he did, they would meet again, but this time on equal footing. Her mind wandered briefly to a simple, human thought. Curiosity had led her here, courage had carried her through, and now, choice would define her future. The first streaks of dawn began to lighten the sky, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, light always found a way in. And as the city awoke, Isolde Fairborn, once just a waitress, now a force to be reckoned with, walked forward into a world that had suddenly become her own. She smiled softly, a whisper to herself and to the shadows around her. This is only the beginning. The night may have ended, but Isolde's story is just beginning. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in those 10 minutes? Don't forget to follow for more dark twists just like this.